Here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 Podcast live stream. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi, and another recording tonight that we've been pretty busy churning out some live content for you guys tonight. I am a big Chicago sports fan and being a big Chicago Cubs fan too. And there isn't a better person to talk about the Chicago Cubs tonight with Alex Patt. He is the co host of his own podcast, and he also writes for the Fansided, which I also do for the Bear Goggles on myself. Alex, good evening, and thanks for joining me on short notice and being a little bit late tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Look forward to talking with you.
All right. Well, before we begin our Cubs conversation, I'm sure you've been paying attention to the MLB playoffs. And a lot of upsets so far. Basically, three division teams all been eliminated. Dodgers last night, despite winning 100 plus games. Baltimore was eliminated, was completely swept, much like the Dodgers, by the Texas Rangers. And let's see, who else am I missing? I know I'm missing somebody. Atlanta is on the verge of being eliminated if they don't win tonight against the Philadelphia Phillies, which I believe they also eliminated them last year as well. So the question that has been being thrown out there is the importance or the winning the division. You know, it's the reason why it exists is, of course, that you win to get a higher seeding, and then only to see the teams like that get eliminated in such a short amount of time, that kind of raises questions regarding the seeding and the system. I'm curious to know, Alex, watching the playoffs, how do you feel about the current format, and does it need to be tinkered?
You know, I look at the current format, and I do like the fact that they made the wild card round 3 games instead of just one single game. I mean, obviously, a single game, you could get a lot of drama. And obviously, we as Cubs fans had a lot of fun in 2015 with that wild card game in Pittsburgh. But
Yeah.
I think that it's more appropriate to have a 3 game series. I do kind of wish, though, that it was 2 wild cards instead of 3. So let's say you kept the format that you had before, just instead of having 3 wildcard teams, you have 2. So your wildcard round is 3 games between your 2 wildcard teams in each league. Then you go on to the division series. That's kind of the way that I wouldn't mind having it. Is it the worst format? Absolutely not. I do kind of like the fact that, even though it kind of hurt the Cubs this year, I always kind of like the fact that they went with a more NFL style tiebreaker system. So head to head matchups. I think that obviously with a wild card round now, you don't need that game 163 type tie scenario. So I think it's okay now going with that tiebreaker system that they have in the NFL. So those are kind of like my overall thoughts. And, I can't really say that I think that it's bad that teams are getting a layoff. I understand why it's frustrating for some fans saying, hey, our team had X amount of days off and now they look rusty. But I mean, you look at the teams that have lost that you mentioned earlier, the division winners, you can almost look at each division winner and kind of point out some of the flaws. And you know what? Sometimes flaws just get exposed by teams with lesser records. They're more ready to win in the postseason.
Jared Carabas on Twitter says, I want the wild card back to one game playoff and then make the division series and beyond the best of 7. The owners get the same amount of games to profit. The fans get better entertainment. The teams with more depth get a better chance to move on, which of course is the ones who win the division. Do you buy into what Jared is saying, or do you think that it's you don't want to tinker too much at this point?
Yeah, it's funny because I never really thought of it that way. Obviously you have multiple 7 game series already with the championship series and the World Series. And then you look at basketball and hockey, those are 7 game series across the board, and you have 4 rounds of those. I do like the fact that the division series is 5 games. I mean, I feel like it's kind of nice to gradually go up. You start with 3, then you go to
Mhm.
5, then 7 and 7. And I
Right.
mean, you know, a game 5 in a division series could be very dramatic, very fun. Um, Obviously, if you have a game 7 in a division series, that would probably be even better. But I kind of like the way it builds up. That's kind of the way I
Mhm.
see it. I mean, it's just, and think about it too. You already play 162 games. I know it's the same amount of games here technically, but at least you can separate your series a bit. 3 games, 5 games. You have that day or two off in between. I mean, 3 straight 7 game series for baseball teams. That that's a lot of consecutive games in the same series. So would I be like, oh, this is the worst idea ever? No, but I think I'm okay with the format the way it is now, with 5 game division, then 7 in the championship, 7 in the World Series.
Mhm. I'm trying to pull up an article written by Ken Rosenthal. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. He wrote about the playoff format, and he mentioned about giving like a division winners, in this case the Dodgers, Orioles, the Braves, among others. I know I'm missing another one. The Astros a 1 game advantage. Like a 1-0 advantage. Kind of like he mentioned Korean KBO. It's also being done in the Japanese MPB as well. Is, do you like that idea, or do you think that's too un-American in your opinion?
I mean, we've been playing so long with, you just got to win the games. It just feels like going away from that format it would seem like such a titanic shift. I
Right.
mean, like, listen, you obviously play to be the highest seed possible. I mean, really, because you're getting days off and you're getting home field advantage. I mean, what more can you possibly get? The way I see it is, sometimes if you're the best team, then play like the best team. I mean, I mean, really, and listen, we can go back a number of times when in old playoff formats when the number 1 seed was eliminated. I mean, you remember in 2003, the Cubs eliminated the Braves. The Braves
Yeah.
had a much better record, and the Marlins eliminated the Giants. The Giants were the best team in baseball that year, or at least in the National League. They had the best record. And that was when you just went straight to the division series. You had one wild card, and everyone played in the division series, and then you had the championship series and the World Series. So, I mean, this is nothing new. Seeing lesser teams lose in the first round. And maybe it seems newer, quote unquote, to a lot of people who've been watching the game and been around a lot longer, because there was a point for many years it was just the championship series and the World Series. So we just don't, some people don't have that long exposure. But go back to when the wild card was even added. I mean, listen, you had wild card teams win the World Series. I mean, they're the bane of my existence, but I remember the Cardinals in 2011. They got in on the last day. They won the World Series. The Cardinals again in 2006. They won 83 games. They won the whole thing. It happens. It happens. And obviously, some people in the 90s just got used to the Yankees winning all the time because the Yankees were just always the best team. But
Right.
that doesn't always last. And, it, sports has always loved this underdog story, right? Like, people love the underdog. It's just kind of funny now how over the past 2 years we've been sitting here thinking, man, we love the underdog, but how come the top dog isn't getting all these advantages? I don't. It's a funny shift to me. It used to be
Mhm.
the other way around.
Right. And even in Japan, having lived there most of my life, even the current format that they have, where the winners of each leagues already having a 1-0 advantage, is not universally well received either. Not it's not 100%
Sure.
100% received. And to be fair, I'm sure American fans would be angry knowing that you know you already have a 1-0 advantage without having played a single inning, which probably doesn't seem un-American, which is why I use that term. So
Right.
I understand that there will be brushback from the fans and the media, given that the baseball is such an old school slash conservative game, which still has a long ways to go in order to attract fans. Although the pitch clock certainly helped this year gain new fans or even brought back old ones as well. Speaking of the pitch clock, were you happy with how the pitch clock worked out, or do you feel like it still needs some kinks worked out for next year and beyond?
So it's funny. The first time the pitch clock was ever proposed, and this goes back a few years, I thought, how unbaseball is that? I was sitting there thinking, oh, this is supposed to be the only sport without a clock. Every other sport has it, but not baseball. That's what makes it unique. And then going into this year when they implemented it, I said, you know what I think? I honestly think that we're going to forget it's there. You're just going to watch the game and you're not even going to think about it. And honestly, that's exactly how it ended up being for me. Every time I watched a game, I wasn't even thinking about the pitch clock. Wasn't even thinking about it. The game just flowed and
Mm-hmm.
it just went and you don't think about it. But then sometimes you look at a few games and you say, if we didn't have a pitch clock, this game that's right now heading into the eighth inning would probably still be in the fourth or the fifth. I
Right.
mean, because there are some pitchers, Cubs fans will remember Steve Traxel back in the
Yeah.
day. It,
Mm-hmm.
ugh, it was torture watching him sometimes. He was called the human rain delay for a reason. And I feel like with this nice flow that you have, you're not losing the romance of baseball. You're not your experience at the baseball isn't deterred, but it is kind of nice when it just kind of moves along because I've been to a lot of games this year. All the games I've been to this year were day games. So naturally, I live out here in the Chicago suburbs. So when you have to go into the city, you got to think about getting home. You got to think about beating some of that traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times when you were trying to be head home from a game and the traffic was just awful. Whereas now it's like, if it ends at a certain time, you could kind of beat some of it. So I'm fine with it. I really have no complaints. The only thing I'll say is this comes back to the Braves and when they had the Acuna lifting the base and they had the video montage. Cody Bellinger early in the year got penalized because he
Mm-hmm.
tipped his cat at Dodger Stadium. And then that happens and nothing. I think they got to really shore up those types of things. Like if you have to call a timeout to give tip of the cap or celebrate some milestone, then make some kind of rule to clarify that because it clearly wasn't consistent.
Mm-hmm. So now that the playoffs have pretty much moved into the ALCS, we already have the Rangers and the Astros, and also the Arizona Diamondbacks. A painful reminder of what happened with the Cubs
Yeah.
back in late September when they went there, which we'll get to in a bit. But the winner of the Braves Phillies will likely be facing each other. So basically, now, let's start with the American League side. Who do you like in this one and why?
I love this matchup because you're getting the defending champs against this new fun regime they have there in Texas. I really
Yep.
like watching Texas play. They got an offense they can hit. They
Yes.
can really, really hit. And
Mm-hmm.
give a lot of credit to Nathan Eovaldi. He's pitched in some big games this year and he's pitched very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to put up a good fight. But, I think they got a good chance of winning it. But right now, it is really just hard to count the Astros out
Mm-hmm.
simply for what this team has accomplished. They're playing in their seventh straight championship series.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
teams
amazing. I know
incredible.
102 that's a bit tarnished because of the cheating scandal and all that, but it's still a great accomplishment on
Absolutely. And even after the cheating, they didn't miss a beat. They just kept winning. They
that.
didn't stop. They got back to the championship series, got back to the World Series, got back to the championship series again, got back to the World Series again, won the World Series again. It's just it's gotten to the point with the Astros where you say, you know what? I'm not going to bet against you unless you're out. If
Right.
you're still in it, I can't have a reason to doubt you. Truly.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not always the flashiest, like there's a lot
Sure.
of flash with the
Mm-hmm.
Texas Rangers. You
Yeah.
look at what Corey Seaver can do when he's healthy, the way he hits the ball. You look at Adolis Garcia, one of
Mm-hmm.
the most underrated players in baseball. I mean,
Yeah.
just a star-studded team, but the Astros, they just get it done. They get it done every year. So I would love to see a 7-game series between those two
Me too. Me
teams.
too.
How great would a game 7 in Texas be? That would be like the Cowboys being in the championship. Like it'd be a
Sure,
big
sure.
deal. So I
Mhm.
would love to see a 7-game series there.
But you'll pick the Astros in 7?
That's what I'll go with for now. Yes.
Yeah, I'll probably go with the Astros in 7 as well. The all Texas series, Dallas and Houston have a bitter rivalry going between the two cities. I have a friend who is a very popular talk show host in the Dallas area. So they're going to be talking a lot of smack about the city of Houston and the Astros in general. But yeah, I do worry about the Rangers pitching,
Mhm.
especially the bullpen. The amount of games that they have blown this year is just
Yep.
astronomical. And when you have facing a savvy team like the Astros, I do worry that might get exposed. And
Sure.
yeah, so hopefully the Rangers offense can carry several games, but I do worry that the Astros experience might prevail, maybe in 6 or 7 games in that regard.
Sure.
Let's
Yeah.
move on to the NLCS. Arizona shocked the Dodgers in 3 games. They ended the Dodgers season yesterday, and the Braves and the Phillies. The winner of that series will likely play. We'll get to host them, thankfully. But what do you think of the Diamondbacks? Are you surprised how far they've come to get here?
Yes, and this is kind of how I look at the Diamondbacks. That is a team that has some real notable talent. Corbin Carroll is a legitimate star. He
Mm-hmm.
is really, really good.
Yes.
He's got all the tools. You look at guys like Moreno, their catcher. He's
Yeah,
obviously
Moreno,
gotten
yes.
hurt, but he's a good player too. Marte is very good. You have a really good. And the other thing too is when you bring in a guy like Evan Longoria, who's played in big games before, he's an
Yeah.
experienced veteran. He's, it's funny going into this year, you're like, is he even playing? And then he comes into this year, has a regular season, but here he is in the postseason making big plays defensively and offensively. Like he looks like, the in prime Longoria that we remembered way back when he was with the Rays.
Yeah.
So, it's a very good team. And obviously, like Merrill Kelly and guys like that contribute as well. And this isn't to take credit away from them, but I do feel like we're kind of seeing that prototypical team where you just say they got hot at the right time.
Yeah.
That happens. Sometimes, like, you get hot at the right time, you can go really, really far. And remember when we ran into the Mets in 2015 and, in the LCS when they swept us? That was
Yeah.
kind of like that too. That was a very good team. You had some very good players, but they really got hot at the right time. And this is what I think we're seeing with the Diamondbacks. How far is it going to go? I don't know. Maybe it goes all the way. Maybe it goes to the World Series. Maybe it stops out. I don't know. But they did more than I expected. I wasn't even sure they could beat Milwaukee because they swept them too. Not going to
Yeah.
complain about that. But I
Yeah.
mean, they went in there and just took it from them. And then here you are, Dodger Stadium, game 1. You got one of the best pitchers ever, and they smoke him. And he doesn't even get through the first inning. Though, what do we know about Clayton Kershaw in the postseason? The track record in the postseason is quite different than the regular season, but it's very impressive run that they've gone on. Very, very impressive. I'm just wondering how far it'll go because whoever they play, whether it's the Phillies or the Braves, that's a lot for that pitching to handle. Those offenses are going to be ready, and they've risen to the challenge so far. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
see how long it goes. But impressive story by them. But I feel like right now, watching the game right now, the game 5, scoreless right now. But I feel like whoever wins that series between the Phillies and the Braves, I feel like is going to be the NL champion here.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think whoever wins the Phillies Braves series certainly are battle tested. Both
Mm-hmm.
teams are, and I think Arizona could get it. Maybe sneak and get a game or two if they're really, really lucky. But I think whoever wins tonight's Braves Phillies has a real good shot at the going to the World Series right now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the Phillies. That offense is loaded, and the Braves' offense is loaded. Though I think the Phillies have a little bit better in the pitching department.
Mm-hmm. My guest tonight is Alex Patt, who writes for Fansided, Cubby Scrib as well, and also the co-host of Swirsky Sports himself as well. Alex, let's move on to the Chicago Cubs, and the end still leaves a bitter taste in the mouth of many,
Hmm.
you and I included. And at least, on the brighter side, they certainly made a nice progress compared to the what we've seen the last couple of years. But the issues still persist about the bullpen usage and the lineups and everything about we complained about David Ross this year pretty much kind of came back to bite us. But when you look at the Cubs this past year, what stood out to you the most? Both the positive and also the negative. Let's start with the positive ones.
Well, Justin Steele proved himself to be an ace. I mean,
Mhm.
he had a phenomenal season, and I think that had it not been for that last rough game against the Pirates, he would absolutely be one of the front runners for Cy Young. He'll still probably be one of the finalists, but that kind of rough inning against the Pirates where he couldn't get out of it, you know, Blake Snell probably has that locked in now. But overall, the story for Justin Steele was phenomenal this year, and that was a big positive. We saw the
Mhm.
farm system grow to a top 5 farm system. That's really important. You saw Seiya Suzuki take a really important step in the second half. He was probably my favorite hitter to watch in the second half was Seiya Suzuki, and
Yeah.
watching him reach the 20 home run mark, finish with a 800 plus OPS, finish with a 280 some batting average, really good numbers across the board. If he can keep building on that, then that is going to be a really darn good player. That was great to see.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, Nico Horner was very, very consistent. I know it was a very sour ending in the last month because of how he struggled, but I think overall, I can look at Dansby Swanson and say, okay, here's a great defensive shortstop who's very smart and can hit 20 home runs. Those are all really, really good things. And then I also have to give a lot of credit to Adbert Alzolay to adjusting to that new role being a closer because even back in the day, 2020, 2021, when he was starting games, I think the vibe that most of us got was that's a reliever. That's fine, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But, the way he threw and how he threw in games, because he would go the first few innings just dominant, lights out. And then you'd see things kind of turn for the worse. So you're like, okay, that's a reliever right there. So the fact that we saw so much growth within the organization and growth in the second half when the front office, I think, realized, you know what, a lot of this dumpster diving, a lot of this experimental cheap stuff, we're going to cut bait with it. I mean, when you brought in Eric Hosmer, who was clearly washed up, Tucker Barnhart, who was clearly washed up,
Mhm.
Trey Mancini, who was clearly washed up. I mean, it, the fact that they're like, okay, you know what, we're just going to cut our losses here, I think sends a message that they're ready to be more serious. And I do kind of wish they were more serious early on, but I think it's at least a good sign of things going forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The negatives, certainly, the number one thing that stands out the most is, David Ross as the manager. You mentioned about the usage of, washed up veterans, Hosmer, Mancini, to a degree, Masterboni, using him early on. Uh, and then the usage of the bullpen just basically killed the Cubs the last 2 weeks of the season. Unfortunately, um, were you surprised, or were you? Let me rephrase the questions. How surprised were you about David Ross being brought back by the organization?
Yeah, I mean, being under contract, I feel like I expected it. I didn't expect him to go anywhere. What I will be curious to see is how things go next year. If they get to
Mm-hmm.
the playoffs, then okay. If they don't, then I do think they would be serious about replacing him. And hopefully next year too, David Ross is kind of supplied with more valuable depth and not having Hosmer, Mancini, like those types of washed up veterans on the roster. If they're more
Yeah.
serious about bringing in more talent, then you won't run into this issue quite as much. And it was also very unfortunate at the end with the bullpen. Azalea got hurt,
Yeah.
Fulmer got hurt, Boxberger got hurt. It was the perfect storm of everything to fall apart. It really, really
Right.
was.
And Mark
So
Leiter Jr. forgot how to pitch as well a little bit there.
yeah, I think he was completely just the tank was empty.
Gassed. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Gassed.
he pitched over 60 innings and he is not used to doing that. So by September, his arm was dead. And you know
Mhm.
what? That's another message too to the front office. You need some lefties in the bullpen. You really, really do, because he was very good, Mark Leiter, for the first half of getting lefties out, even though he was a righty. He had the splitter that always worked really, really well. He was able to get out of some of those jams, but when you look at what happened down the stretches, when you don't have other lefties to face those types of guys and Leiter just runs out of gas, then you're kind of in trouble. I do think, though, that next year there is good potential for Luke Little to be a big part of that bullpen.
Yeah, Luke Little, a very young left-hander making his debut, and really, really showed his stuff in a limited role toward in the late September. So hopefully he is ready for a bigger role in 2024 and moving forward. Certainly, David Ross is. Probably faces a lot of pressure, and if things don't go well, he might be the first manager to be fired next year if all indications are correct. And certainly the front office has to do their job, and more importantly, the ownership has to be really, really committed to building this team into a contender. And all indications are, Tom Ricketts has said that being close to the playoffs is not acceptable, and that was also echoed by the president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer, as well. And the ownership certainly faces greater scrutiny as much as David Ross next year and beyond that. But do you buy into what Tom Ricketts is saying, or do you feel like there's a bit of a still part of you like, yeah, I don't know, I'll wait and see?
I do buy it. I think this team is committed to being good. I really, really do. Does that mean I think they're going to go and sign Shohei Ohtani? No. Do I even think they're going to give a 10-plus year deal to Cody Bellinger? I don't really have strong feelings that they will, but I do think they are very committed and doing what they can and winning. And I think that a lot of what's going to happen this offseason is you're going to hear trade rumors up the wazoo. They're going to say, you know what? We have a lot of currency in farm assets, more than just dollars and cents in farm assets. So they're going to make some trades. They might part ways with guys that might either be fan favorites or thought to be future fan favorites to get this done. But I do feel like that this organization, top to bottom, is very serious, because you hear other sports teams when they fall short of expectation or they just don't have a good season, is that there's excuse making, there's defensiveness. I don't get a lot of defensiveness from either Hoyer or Ricketts. I hear listen, we did what we did, but it needs to be better. We're going to make it better. So I am choosing to believe the words of President Jed Hoyer and Chairman Tom Ricketts. Now they got to prove their words are true. It's all on them now. They got my trust.
Yeah.
Show me.
Absolutely. I think it's a very important offseason for the Cubs. Certainly coming close to the playoffs is no longer acceptable.
Right.
And if they say it publicly, like they have done, just after the season is over, you have to back it up. You have to back up Jed, and then Jed also has to back up David Ross as well. If David Ross is the long-term guy that they think he can be, and David certainly has to learn from his mistakes as well. you have to provide him with the enough ammunition before you make a decision on David Ross.
Right.
Certainly, again, we've pointed out the flaws in him sticking with the veterans way too long. Perhaps maybe I've tweeted this multiple times that he sees himself in those players like Mancini and Hosmer, guys who are kind of toward the downside of their careers, near the end of their time in the major leagues, and that Ross, as we know, was not exactly a household name. When he was a player, and he was more of
Right.
a like a role player backup, where he
Hmm.
excelled very much so. So I hope he can take off his glasses and give younger players more shot. Because we complain about the how he handled the Alex Canario situation. I'm trying to remember, Peter Crow Armstrong as well. When you call him up in the, late in the season for the playoff push, and not giving them any, meaningful at bat is just a criminal. And certainly that's something that, hopefully David and the front office guys will get together and, and make sure that it doesn't send the wrong message to the team, that they reward mediocrity over young guys who certainly pay their dues in the minor league system.
Yeah, I do wish Canario got more at bats because when he did get at bats, he really did crush the ball. I mean, we saw the grand slam that he hit, he saw the doubles that he hit. It's I think that what's key to alluding to what you just said is everyone needs to be on the same page, and it's not to be cliche, but it's a team effort. The front
Mhm.
office got to do their job. David Ross has to do his job, and the players got to do their job. It's a
Yeah.
team effort, top to bottom, and
Mhm.
um, I am confident that they're all going to be on the same page when time comes. It was a very weird season. There was a point where you were 10 games under. There was
Yeah.
a point where you were 10 games above, and
Mhm.
then it kind of just all evened out in the end. But this was kind of a weird transition year where you were looking to be competitive, but you knew you weren't a World Series contender. Next year, the goal is very, very clear. You got to
Yeah.
get to the postseason. That you get
Mhm.
it's postseason or bust next year. So I think it's a good opportunity for the Cubs to be, you know what?
Mhm.
Here's our goal. We're going to be on the same page from day one. This is how we're going to do it. Because a lot of this year was, well, we're transitioning, but we're also kind of trying to be good. It was kind of like an awkward mix. There was times when you thought, okay, this is clearly going to be a sell-off. Oh, wait, we're going to buy now because we got back into this. But for next year, the goal, the vision, it's clear. Playoffs.
Yeah. And certainly, Alex Canario, given that he had a horrific injury in the off season last year, to get to where he is was certainly remarkable. And
Mm-hmm.
he's certainly somebody who paid his dues, and certainly was rewarded. But certainly, hopefully, he's given more at bats next year, whether it's a DH or an outfield, moving forward. So, top three needs, or maybe top three season needs this offseason, and the realistic targets here. It doesn't probably have to be top three, but we've been hearing crazy rumors out there that Pete Alonso wants to be a Cub. Then he ended up hiring Scott Boras to be his new agent.
Go figure,
Once,
right?
and then Juan Soto rumor is out there. Soto, since he came to San Diego, hasn't been that great of a player. Uh, he looks nothing like he was with the Washington. Certainly, all the crazy stories about the San Diego clubhouse and the may have played an impact in the morale of the all the players, including Soto there. But if you had to pick one between Alonso and Soto, who would you pick?
That's a great question because I think that Soto is kind of more of the complete package. He'll hit for average, power, get on base. So I think as a whole, I would probably want Soto, but with Pete Alonso, you know what you're always going to get with Pete Alonso, and that's elite power. We haven't had a 40 plus home run hitter on the Cubs since Derek Lee in 2005. That's
Yeah.
the last time. If you bring Pete Alonso here, you're solving your first base issue, and you're pretty much, you could slot in 35, 40 home runs easily.
Mhm.
Very, very easily. I mean, he has not missed a beat in his entire career.
Yeah.
He's stayed on the field and he's delivered consistent numbers throughout.
Yeah.
So I feel like Alonso is a bit more realistic, because I think that the Mets are obviously going to switch a few things up, but they're going to obviously have a lot of things that are still in place. Steve Cohen has endless numbers of funds. And,
Mhm.
you look at the Padres, I feel like the asking price for Juan Soto is going to be a bit higher, and it's going to be a matter of how much are you going to be willing to give up for Juan Soto. And, you know, Juan Soto, if he comes here, if you have to DH one of your outfielders, okay, fine, whatever. Doesn't matter. Even if you have to DH Juan Soto, fine. The nice thing about Alonso is you bring in Alonso, there's your first baseman right there.
Mhm. Right.
There he is. It fills a good need. So I think Pete Alonso is more realistic. Am I saying it's going to happen? I don't know, but I feel like it's more realistic. But baseball's wild. Baseball's unpredictable. I'm curious to see how much the Padres are trying to switch things up, because the past 3 years, the Padres have gone all in, and they've only made the postseason one of those 3 years going all in.
Right. That was last year when the
Right.
Padres came close to, before they were eliminated by the Phillies in the NLCS last year. So
Yep.
Pete Alonso more of a realistic target for the Cubs, even though he has only 1 year on the contract. And as we mentioned earlier, Scott Boras is his new agent. So there's going to be a lot of, back and forth regarding the contract extension, etc. Now, speaking of contract extension, Cody Bellinger had a wonderful season. Literally gambled on himself. Looked like a great player that he was once with the Dodgers before,
Mm-hmm.
things just kind of went sideways the last few years before he signed with us. Certainly, he's a free agent. Going to command a lot of big interest out there. Probably next to Shohei Ohtani, he is the arguably the top 3 free agent in
Absolutely.
this market. What do you think is a market for Cody Bellinger, and where do you put the Cubs' odds on re-signing him?
I don't want to say 50-50. I want to say maybe it's 40-60 they will. So a little less than half.
Mhm.
I don't want to rule it. I certainly don't want to rule it out. And, Cody Bellinger seemed to really like it here.
Yeah.
But listen, when Scott Boras is your client, money talks,
Yeah.
right? I mean, at the end of the day, money talks. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of teams are going to be in on him. I think the Yankees would love to have him.
Yeah.
Because that was a rumored team to go after him.
At the trade deadline, when
right,
the Cubs were pretty bad. Yes.
right, exactly. So obviously, there's teams like that. Depending on what the Dodgers do, would they be inclined on bringing him back? Would maybe San Francisco come out and say, you know what, we're going to spend a crap ton of money. We're going to go out and get Cody Bellinger. And, maybe there's a surprise team here or there that comes in that offers a lot of money. But, I mean, here's the thing. He's going to get a lot of money, and he's going to get a number of years. And while I don't think the Cubs are strapped for cash, I think that their philosophy is they're very, very hesitant to give out super mega deals. Like you saw last year, the Padres signed Xander Bogaerts to a 13-year deal. No way the Cubs were doing that. You saw Trey Turner get a 10-plus year deal with the Phillies.
Yeah.
You saw all these guys get these deals, but then here's Dansby Swanson, 7-year deal. I think that fits a lot more of the mold that the Cubs follow in terms of a philosophy.
Yeah.
So it's really, to me, going to come down to the years. That's what I think it comes down to. I mean, listen, if you were to give him more annual, but a few less years, I think the Cubs would be more tempted to do it. Like, let's say you gave him 7 years, but you were paying a higher AAV. I mean, listen, you're the Cubs. You have your own network.
Yeah.
You have Wrigley Field that sells out every game. You have that new DraftKings sports book at the stadium.
Sure.
You can spend the money. it's just they don't like that super long-term commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to come down to years, and I could truly, honestly, though, seeing him going to like New York, because New York is going to say, you know what, we missed the postseason last year. We
Right.
need another power bat. That stadium would be built perfectly for Cody Bellinger's swing with that short porch. I could definitely see a team like the Yankees being in on him.
Mm-hmm. Would say, for example, 6 year, 210 too much in your opinion, or the math is still years need to be added up a little bit more?
I think years would be needed to be added, maybe a few more extra dollars. If they were able to get him at 6 years and that amount, I'd say pull the trigger. I mean, that to me would sound fantastic, because what, he's going to be 29 next year. You sign him
Mm-hmm.
through mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Sure,
Sure.
why not?
Okay, maybe 7 year, 245. Still, that's about 35 annually. So one
Yeah,
extra year. So
yeah, that might be getting close to the threshold. I don't think the Cubs would want to go for more than like 8,
hmm.
but we'll see. I mean, I can certainly say if he's gonna command 10 plus, the Cubs are not doing that.
Okay. So we mentioned about Shohei Otani earlier, and certainly Otani has his a second Tommy John like surgery again this off season, and there have been debate about his value pretty much throughout this year because he's a free agent. But
Hmm.
I'm curious to ask you if I don't think Otani is the kind of person who cares much about the money. Uh, Certainly because of his injuries. I don't know if he'll get the 10-year deal. I don't know if Otani wants that, but given what we were discussing earlier with Bellinger, let's just say, for example, 5 years. That way, 5 year 250. Would you offer Otani, or is that way too much, even for a guy who's going to be batter only next year?
Oh, I do that in a heartbeat. Because listen, you might not get the arm, but you're
Mhm.
still getting probably the best power bat in baseball. And if you are a major league team and Shohei Otani is on your team, your value is just going to go up, because that international audience that he has, it's going to follow. I mean,
Mhm.
could you imagine the Japanese baseball fans getting to watch Shohei Otani and Seiya Suzuki on the same team?
Yeah.
Oh man, they would love that, and it would be so great for us as fans and for the
Mhm.
game. That would be so exciting. That would be an absolute dream. You know what? If he even never pitched again, if you're getting that bat, 100% worth it. That is a bat that is at the very peak of the mountain. That
Mhm.
power is no joke. He
Mhm.
swings the bat quicker than lightning, and the ball vaporizes in the air.
Sure.
If he just came and he's like, Shohei Otani, that's your DH, that's all you're getting, perfect.
Mhm.
He's Your DH is permanently set, and you can just build the lineup around that. I mean, that would make all the difference in the world. Because frankly, even when he does get healthy again
Mhm.
with his arm,
Yeah.
I really don't know how many years he's going to be pitching. I mean,
No.
the arm
Yeah.
is elite. It is
Mhm.
elite. It is, if he was just a pitcher, he'd be one of the best pitchers of baseball. But I don't know how much longer that arm is going to be in use. I do think that as we go on, he might give you a few more seasons from that arm, and
Right.
when he gets older, it's just going to be permanently the bat, because nothing's going to change with that bat. That lightning quick speed that he has with that swing is going to last a long time. But
Mhm.
let's say he comes back in 25 and pitches,
Yeah.
maybe a few more years, then I just don't think you're going to get as much out of that.
No, I agree with you. I think if Otani is going to play long in the major leagues, he has to be basically at some point maybe focus only on the batting, and
Hmm.
then once he's ready to pitch again in 2025, the rotation certainly might you might have to force a pitcher to be traded, or maybe he ends up leaving because you see the writings on the wall there. But we'll get there when when Otani does join the Cubs and when he wants to pitch again. But certainly, that the 10-year, $500 or $600 million contract doesn't seem plausible. but crazier things have happened, and if the Angels are desperate enough to keep Otani from leaving, they might have to break the bank. But
Oh
certainly,
yeah.
you know, Otani for maybe 4 or 5 years at that price range, at least he can maintain his bargaining power. Even at 34, 35 age, certainly my favor a shorter contract than say 10 years that a lot of the major league teams are handing out. Like candy. So it'll be very interesting to see if Otani where he goes, and if the Cubs have any legitimate shot at keeping at least have him meet and do a presentation like they did to Seiya Suzuki to convince them to sign him as well. So by the way, Suzuki and Otani are both from the same draft class and the same age as well. And Suzuki has said, for the record, he will do he can to try and lure Otani to the Cubs as well. So it will be a very interesting one as well. Let's look at
Yep.
the pitching. Certainly, the starting pitching. Justin Steele was elite. Marcus Stroman was right up there until his injuries started to rob him of his command and everything. But when you look at the Cubs starting pitching this year and then looking into next year, uh, how many starting pitching do you think that the Cubs need? Starters do they need? And uh, who are some of the arms that you see from the minor league system that is starting to really show prosperity? If there's anybody that can take the rotation next year.
Well, I think that Ben Brown is on everybody's radar. He's got stuff, and I think that stuff is what the Cubs need. And when I say stuff, I mean high velocity fastball, slider, those kinds of things where you're not just pitching finesse, you're playing for swings and misses and strikeouts, because that's an essential part of the game these days. You need power in the pitching, you need power arms, you need to miss bats. Ben Brown provides that. Even though he doesn't provide power, I think Jordan Wicks is going to be very, very important. We saw him pitch last year. Overall,
Mhm.
did a very good job. I
Yes.
don't let that one last bad start in Milwaukee fool you. The work that Wicks did was incredibly impressive, and I think right there is an ideal middle of the rotation guy. Um,
Mhm.
I will say this too. I was quite encouraged with the second half from Jamison Tyone after that very disastrous first half.
Mhm.
He went back to pitching more like the way he knows how to, and he felt more comfortable, and you saw the results. Like, if that guy's your 4 or 5 next year and he pitches like he did in the second half, I think you're feeling pretty decent about that. So I think that it's wise to bring in a veteran arm of some sort. I don't think you're going to go big and get like Aaron Nola or anything, but if you
Mhm.
can bring in a veteran arm, and just for insurance to start off, because with young pitchers in the system, you never know what the timetable can look like. You bring in a veteran, and I think you do bring back Kyle Hendricks to be your 5.
Mhm.
uh he's just he really showed this year that he still can pitch, not to where he used to be, but he was overall pretty solid this year, better than I thought he was going to be. And then you can slate Steele in there. um, Stroman's kind of the mystery,
Yeah.
because if he does opt in, I wonder if the Cubs are going to be tempted to trade him. I just don't
Mhm.
know if there's a spot for him at this point. I mean, listen, he's a good pitcher, he's experienced, but to me, he was a really good placeholder over the past few years. And I feel like at this point, you could say, you know what? We can build our pitching rotation and kind
Mhm.
of move along from Stroman. If they kept him, fine, because I still think he's a good pitcher, but I would not be surprised if they tried to move him if he opted in, because there just might not be a spot with where the plans are. But you know what? If he stays and pitches well, then fine. Because, there was a point last year where when the Cubs started winning again, I
Mhm.
thought, you can contend while also trading Stroman, because he might not just be in your long term plans. The Blue Jays did. They
Yeah.
they traded him to the Mets, and they were contenders. It kind of made me think, could you do the same thing there that they did with the Mets trade when he was with the Blue Jays? So that's going to be an interesting to see how it plays out. But you definitely look to next year and say, all right, this rotation needs to miss more bats, and maybe go a bit deeper into ball games than they did early in the season.
Mm-hmm. So as of right now, Steele will be the ace. The
Mhm.
number 2 would be Stroman. Number 3 would be let's see, Jordan Wicks.
Yeah,
Okay.
get a lefty in there.
Kyle Hendricks would be number 5, you said, and then
Mhm.
Ben Brown would be number 4,
I'd probably
or
put
veteran.
a veteran or Tyone, one of those guys.
Oh, I forgot about Tyon. Excuse me. So
Yeah.
Tyon would be 3, Wicks would be 4, Hendricks would be 5. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and you know what? If you go to a 6-man rotation, maybe you do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know not everyone is a fan, but you know what? I say teams have made 6-mans work. Trying to make a 6-man work if you can. If there's the opportunity there for Ben Brown to come up and be an effective starting pitcher, because you know that's what Jordan Wicks is
Mm-hmm.
destined to be. You're not going to move Jordan Wicks to the bullpen. There's no way you're going to do that to start the
Mm-hmm.
season.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have that spot open. And if you're going to bring Kyle Hendricks in, he's obviously going to be in the rotation as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it shapes out. And that's kind of why I think Stroman might not be part of the plans next year, because Steele's your ace.
Yeah.
Tyone's under contract. They love Kyle Hendricks. They want to keep him around. And Jordan Wicks is part of your plans.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to go to a 6-man rotation and you want to get like a Ben Brown or another veteran arm in there, then I don't know. Then maybe there just might not be that spot for Stroman. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Christopher Morel. Do you keep him or do you move him at this offseason as maybe a deal for Soto or Alonso?
Here's the thing. Do I want to trade Morel just to trade Morel? No.
Mm-hmm.
Am I willing to include Morel as a trade chip for an Alonso or a Soto? Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't want him to leave because of what he does or doesn't provide. I'm just saying I'd be willing to use him as a trade chip if that means bringing in Pete Alonso or Juan Soto or an elite player. I really like Christopher Morel. He provides a lot of good things, but if you have the chance to get Pete Alonso, who is one of the premier power hitters in baseball, you got to do it. At this point of the game, you got to make some tough decisions.
Okay. Let's talk about the, let's have maybe a 1 or 2 predictions this offseason from you this offseason. You got any fearless predictions so far? Do you have in mind?
Fearless prediction number 1. I think they're going to make Pete Alonso work. I think they're going to find a way to bring him here.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would you give up for him? What kind of a package we're thinking right now, minor league players wise?
So if we had to include a player on the major league roster, I think Morel would be a good candidate to be involved. I think in terms of minor leaguers, I think you could be looking at like an Owen Casey, maybe a James Triantos. You kind of start there. Brennan Davis doesn't really have much value right now, but maybe you try to throw him in. Maybe you throw in a Hayden Wesneski. He might not have a lot of value now, but I still think there's a lot of upside there. And then, you might have to part with another one. Maybe
pitcher.
Yeah, you could go.
I hope they don't ask for Kate Horton.
Yeah, I think that they would be more willing to give up Ben Brown first over Kate Horton. I think Kate Horton is probably Kate Horton and right now Pete Crow Armstrong are as close to untouchable as it could be. But I'm not saying 100% untouchable, but I think as close as you could be to untouchable. I really think they are insanely high on Kate Horton.
If the Cubs do get Alonso, and if knowing Scott Boras, demand maybe like an 8-year contract, say, oh boy, $300 million or $320. Would you give him that contract? I know his power is great, but his batting average was pretty crappy this past year. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I feel like when you get Pete Alonso, you are just paying for that raw power, and you do what you can to keep that because you know what? The batting average might not be great, but when you're providing the OPS and the home runs you're providing every year on such a consistent basis, that's where the value is on baseball these days. I mean, you can probably see it too that there is much less of a stigma of having a low batting average but high OPS power numbers.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any other fearless prediction?
I think, let's see. That's a great question because Alonso is kind of my big one. If I had another fearless prediction,
Mm-hmm.
I think Marcus Stroman is going to get traded. He's going to opt in. He's
Okay.
going to get traded.
Okay. Good. That sounds like a very good, interesting scenario. Both are definitely plausible. Since the Cubs was already linked to Pete Alonso during the
Right.
trade deadline,
Right.
so it does seem more reasonable given where the Mets are right now. They're not ready to compete in 24. They're looking more towards 25 right now, given all the the contracts and the dead weights that they have, and it
Yep.
will take at least a full season to maybe clean it out. And Buck Showalter no longer there as well, so that might weigh in on his decision to maybe go to maybe somewhere more media friendly, say, compared to New York as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
New York is brutal media wise, and remember too, the Mets just hired David Stearns, so David Stearns now is an opportunity to say, you know what, I kind of want to build this team the way I want to build it.
Absolutely. Are you high on Seiya Suzuki moving forward?
Yes, I think after what we saw this year in the second half, I think that he wasn't 100% healthy in the first
Yeah.
half. Remember, he
Mhm.
did start the year on the IL.
That's
I
right.
don't think
That's
he
right.
was so I don't think he was physically 100%, and I think it was mentally getting to him. So
hmm
when he sat on the bench, he kind of recollected himself, kind of refocused, got a little rest, and that did him a lot of good. So, you know what? If next year he comes back and he hits us 25 home runs, gives us an 850 OPS, and just continues to produce, we'll take it.
hmm Yeah. To be fair, I think Suzuki was kind of down on himself for getting hurt in the spring training, missing out on the World Baseball Classic, and
Yep.
took him a long time to recover. Playing while hurt, and then eventually being benched, and in the August for about 3-4 games. And at least I give David Ross credit for letting him cool down, cool his head, and allow him to come back. And once he returned to the lineup, he looked like basically a totally different player. And for about 2 months or so, if he can do that the entire season, I think the Cubs fans will be super happy, and we no longer have to hear about the Suzuki Fukudome comparison moving forward as well.
Oh
So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, he already had a better season than Fukudome would have had. So
hmm hmm well, listen, Alex, I really appreciate this time tonight. You can follow Alex on Twitter at ChaiFanPat2. He also writes for the Cubbies Crib on Fansided Network as well. So, Alex, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it. And let's hope that your predictions do come true, and that the Cubs are certainly making commitments to become a more complete and competitive team next year and beyond as well. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, and hope to have you on again at some point. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun, and I'd love to do this again sometime.
Thank you very much, and have a great night. We'll talk to you again soon.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.